So right now we have Chéri Smith, and she's a Micmac descendant. Okay, and she's the founder and CEO of Indigenous Energy Initiative. And I'll let her introduce her colleague who is with her today. So Chéri, take it away.
Good morning. Thank you to all of the wonderful folks from the Seminole Tribe for the invitation to be here to share our experiences and learn from and with you all. I'll introduce my colleagues in a moment to you who have joined me here. Again, I'm Chéri Smith. I am CEO and founder of Indigenous Energy Initiative, and I descend through both of my parents from the Micmac Nation of so-called Maine in the Canadian Maritimes. As my ancestors did for thousands of years, my husband makes his living as a fisherman, so we live here on the ancestral Ace and Seminole homelands for half the year, and on the Narragansett Reservation in so-called Rhode Island. In the summer months, the fish tell us where to go and when, basically. So with all of the brilliant minds in this room and the technical and financial content being shared here today, I thought we'd just have a little softer hour together, sharing some of the ways our organization supports our tribal partners in approaching clean energy infrastructure development, maximizing the incredible federal resources that are now available, and making sure that all of that technology and money is deployed in a self-determined way, and in a way that is aligned with Native culture and values and lifeways. So I'd like to introduce to you my esteemed colleagues who will share some case studies a little later with us. With us today is Robert Blake. He's an IEI board member and head of tribal partnerships, and he is founder and executive director of Native Sun Community Power Development in so-called Minnesota, and he is owner of Solar Bear, and you'll get to hear about some exciting work that he's doing in his region. And then joining us are colleagues and relatives from the Seneca Nation. We have Erin Dow, who is going to present to you today, but she is joined here by Rod Pierce, first, I should say, Council Member Josh Jimerson, is that how you pronounce it, is here with us. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet. And Rod Pierce, Management Committee Member for Seneca Holdings. Anthony Giacobbe, General Manager of Seneca Energy, and Wes Johnson, also from Seneca Energy. So you'll get to meet those folks shortly. So let's, is that moving? Let's see, there we go. So the story of how IEI was founded is a long one and a spiritual one, so I won't belabor this meeting with it, but I've been working in the clean energy space for the better part of 3 decades. It hurts to say that a little bit. I won't describe all of that. That's what the bios in the program are for, right? So after years in nonprofit management and in government contracting, including with our beloved Department of Energy, I jumped on the big solar coaster and joined Solar City as head of workforce and training development. We then merged with Tesla, and I became workforce strategy head for the EV and solar manufacturing practices for the gigafactories, basically Buffalo, Nevada, and Fremont, California. And it was then that I was introduced by a dear colleague to the very special people of the Northern Cheyenne Tribe in present-day southeastern Montana. And this tribe has been embattled for 2+ generations, for 40 years, in a battle with Arch Coal, who kind of swindled them out of their mineral rights back in the 70s. And they've been warding off an open cast coal mine and a railroad that was destined to transport that coal all the way to China. And despite, the internal conflict that happens within tribes who are desperately trying to cling to their sacred covenants to protect and preserve the earth, but they're faced with poverty, this tribe voted against opening that mine and engaging in that activity for years, because that was the decision they wanted to make. So when I met them, they had at that moment enacted a resolution. It was pretty momentous, where they would forever eschew fossil fuels and adopt only renewables, and they were looking for help. And so I got the call, and I was with Solar City at the time, and I went to Lyndon and Pete Rive, my bosses, Elon's cousins, and I said, these folks have been saying no to so long to fossil development, they need something to say yes to. We're the largest solar company in the world. If not us, who? And they said yes. And I went and I was introduced to for the first time to my co-founder, Otto Braided Hair, who is a tribal and spiritual leader for the tribe. And standing by a sacred water source, the ancestors spoke, mine, yours, they all spoke. It brought me to my knees, and I realized that my entire career was a learning journey to this very moment where it was time to put all that knowledge and experience to work supporting Native people and harnessing the power of the sun. So that's how we came to be. So the purpose of IEI is supporting tribes' self-determined efforts to build tribal capacity to finance, develop, and own and manage solar and other renewable energy, clean energy, sustainability projects, and to establish robust energy education, workforce training, and economic development ecosystems to support those efforts. And now we're working closely even further with our federal, state, and NGO academic partners to eliminate identify and eliminate utility and discriminatory practices and foster equitable energy policy. So the key word here is ourselves. We are not coming in and dictating. It's tribal self-determination and self-reliance. We listen more than we teach, and we apply the knowledge that we have to doing things in a way that our partner tribes request. So we are a team of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. We're experts in clean energy technology and policy and finance and construction, education and workforce development, and we support tribes in developing their own capacity to be self-reliant in their pursuit of a clean energy future. So how do we do this? It's collaboration, as Bob likes to say, collaboration, communication, it's essential. And so we work so closely with our federal, our state, our academic, NGO, corporate, and philanthropic partners, many of whom are here in this room. And while there is technical assistance and support becoming even more readily available from DOE, they can't possibly fill every gap in the capacity building needs of all tribes seeking help, and that's why we exist. So we're working together on all of these things, and at the same time, we're helping to move the needle on policy. So how do we do this? Who pays? We purposefully run on philanthropy for many reasons, trust being the primary one. We aren't in this to make money. So when a tribe asks us, how much does it cost for your help? We can honestly respond, nothing. So we have found that goes a long way towards developing a trusting relationship. And we also run on philanthropy so that tribes can keep more of the federal funding that is typically siphoned off by developers in the previous way we used to do development, who, not surprisingly, some of them are unscrupulous. So we try and avoid that. So the whole premise that drives the work that we do is this term that we've been hearing a lot in the last decade, just transition, right? And there's a lot of debate about what that means. But for us to truly have a just transition to clean and sustainably fueled futures, this infrastructure development that we're all here talking about, it must be done by Native people for Native people as much as possible. And we can't do that 100% yet. Like, we're honest with our capabilities, right? But that's where we should be looking. So think about that concept for a minute. By the people, for the people. The same model can be applied to any community in our country, marginalized or otherwise, in our world. Our tribes are setting an example, and the world is watching right now. And what the group of us here would like to share with you today are some tangible ways that our tribes, and the tribes we're working with are ensuring that just transition for Native people. So the people you see here in these photos are tribal members working on projects in their own communities. These are our graduates of the Solar Warriors program that we operate at IEI. Our board member, Chief Henry Red Cloud, Oglala Lakota hereditary chief, he founded Red Cloud Renewable Energy Center that some of you may have heard of 20 years ago, and he's been supporting Native people in learning clean energy technologies for a long time. So for now, we've been sending our groups of solar warriors to Henry's facility for 9 to 14 days of training, and that's paid for with scholarships. This is okay when we're doing small projects at a slow pace, but as all of this funding comes in to tribal country, we're going to need to ramp this up, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about the academic partnerships that we're forging in order to get that done. So the true power of clean energy technologies is not only in their ability to generate electricity from our relatives, the sun and the wind and the water, but in the way they create positive, profound impacts on our economies, as well as the environment and our health and our quality of life. So we all know environmental preservation is tied to our indigenous culture, our identity, and the stewardship of our planet for the next 7 generations and beyond, right? But, of course, but can we also return ourselves to a state of self-reliance with clean energy? And yeah, the answer is yes. And what drives us is that question, because how can we be truly sovereign if we're dependent on resources controlled by outsiders? We can't, right? So for some of our tribal partners, clean energy means economic development for the first time since the deliberate extermination of the buffalo by colonists, or the decimation of our fisheries or our forests, right? So, or for others, it's moving away from extractive sources of revenue that they've done to survive, and towards clean regenerative enterprises that align with indigenous values that can replace or augment or enhance, or whatever the tribe decides, whatever enterprises they have going. So yes, some of our tribes already possess wealth, but most don't. And I just read a report from the Washington State based credit union, I can't remember the name of it, that said Native Americans right now have 8 cents of wealth for every dollar that non-natives have, white American households have. And Native poverty is still standing at a rate of 25.4%, which is the highest among any single ethnic group in the US. So clean energy development done in a self-determined way can change those dismal statistics for the tribes who are suffering and restore vibrance and vitality to communities that are struggling. And if done in the right way, for all of us, it means job creation. So depending on a tribe's economic situation, building clean energy infrastructure can mean either enhancing an existing economy or creating one, providing new green jobs, or it can mean jobs for the first time for many tribal members, lifting their families out of poverty with well-paying careers, building or supporting this infrastructure right in their own communities for their very own people. And this, we see this work that when we're on the ground, you know, I know you all who have done this work, to see the pride and the sense of place, and it's profound. And we have our young people, some of whom you saw in these photos, where they say, oh, you know, I had thought about committing suicide. I was going to do it on Tuesday. But this job came, and you taught me how to build solar, and I think I have hope now. And this happens all too much. And so this is serious business, not just from a business standpoint, but from a human standpoint. And I get choked up because it's really powerful. So look at this. So for years, we've been analyzing what seem to be insurmountable barriers to entry for tribes to be a part of the clean energy revolution. Technically, our 4th industrial revolution, Matt? Is that what it is? These clips are from a 2016 report by our revered colleagues at Sandia National Lab. Sandra Begay, you are my hero. So, in this report, 24 experts were asked to describe what they believed were the most significant barriers to renewable energy development on tribal lands. And if you look here, you see financing and funding, infrastructure, tribal leadership and staff capacity, partnerships, community vision, strategic energy planning, federal policy and programs. And this sentence, addressing these barriers requires multifaceted approaches. Experts suggest that market forces, including renewable energy requirements, would increase the availability of financial resources and incentives for development. Experts also mentioned that federal policy and programs promoting renewable energy development, including specific grants, loans, rebates, tax incentives, and federal power purchase agreements, would encourage development if made available to tribes. Flash forward, y'all, right? Look where we are today. And the ITC and the tax credits for tribes, direct pay, transferable, everything our folks were just talking about. We cannot understate the value and impact that this brings. And I just have to acknowledge the unprecedented efforts of this administration and our relatives and friends at DOE, who have removed more barriers in the last 6 months than ever before in history. Wahala, David, who aren't here, Tommy, Matt, who's here. You guys, please. As we heard from our colleagues at Godfrey Kahn, funding for clean energy projects on tribal lands has historically come from developers who siphon the bulk of the profit and benefit out of our projects and tribal communities, or government sources such as state and federal grants and incentives that have been limited in scope and rarely cover full project costs. I'll show you a sort of a transformation with our Northern Cheyenne project here. That addresses this. No more. Look how far we've come in only 6 months, thanks to your efforts and leadership. Wilaliuk, thank you all so much. So all of you here have been hearing so much already this morning here on webinars, on conferences, about the programs and the dollars. And if you aren't alone if you feel like it's a little bit overwhelming, and that's just the LPO application process. Just kidding, Matt. But seriously, it's a lot for even the most savvy tribes. And while this unprecedented amount of funding for tribal communities is cause for celebration, the majority of 574 tribes do not possess the expertise needed to leverage this funding and develop their own clean energy infrastructure without some more help. Many of the tribes we support don't have the capacity to navigate the federal process, let alone develop projects. So that's where our no-cost support comes in. So energy infrastructure development is not easy, as y'all know, for any community, let alone tribal communities who have tribal leadership who operate within a historical context of forced political reorganization and cultural removal and economic devastation, and y'all work with short time frames to address legislative and social and economical and cultural rights affecting our nations. You all are faced, tribal leaders, with job demands that are really unique and difficult, and then you add this stuff to it. So given the backdrop of the issues that face us in tribal country, our leaders are often operating in this constant state of triage. You know, I think it was that Sandia report that said stopping the bleeding while attempting not to do more harm and attempting to continually move forward. So elected leadership can and should play a critical role in educating our communities. However, championing and leading renewable energy development is not solely a responsibility held by the tribal council members or business leaders. Department heads and supervisors, hired staff, community members, elders, youth especially, can and should all play a role in the future of energy development on tribal lands, because each of them contributes such unique wisdom and hope for the future in the case of youth, and as they develop their own capacity, learning along with the process, they become the experts for the next generation. So stakeholder involvement and education of our tribal leadership is essential to realizing this transformative power of clean energy, and acknowledging that community collaboration and intertribal collaboration and the combining of Western technology and knowledge with indigenous wisdom and knowledge is the way that our people will begin to or continue to prosper. We believe this, and we'll save our planet in the process. My people have a word for that. It's etuapdemunk, which literally translated means two-eyed seeing the benefits of both and applying both to what we're doing here, because we can't do it alone. We can't. And so for now, until the vision of completely sovereign nations that can do this completely by themselves, we have to work together. So how do we infuse self-determination into the various stages of clean energy development? So let's look at strategic energy planning. First and foremost, acceptance of clean energy development by a tribal community really hinges on so many factors. And of course, the larger the scale of the project, the more likelihood there is of opposition from within the community. And that comes from, usually it's unawareness, but it also can come from tribes that have fossil resources. They fear that the addition of renewable resources will, make those defunct and lose. But there can be a win-win, and that's what the planning is all about. There's also, without planning, likelihood of opposition from utilities, but we'll get to that in a bit. So clean energy, consistent with many tribes' cultural values towards preservation and protection of the environment, but each of our tribes are unique and thus express and interpret and protect our cultures differently, and strategic planning is really essential, not only for making good decisions about which and how much technology to deploy, but for identifying and protecting sacred sites, for protecting people and our values that are important to us. So this begins with tribes having a community vision and for their energy futures, and creating an ecosystem of capable institutions to support good development. A community vision can also aid in the identification of areas in which tribes lack capacity, and we can talk about that in a moment as well. So project finance and development, that's what we've been talking about this morning. Until we achieve our vision of tribes with internal energy development entities, we've got to rely on partnerships. It's that two-eyed seeing to get this money deployed in the form of new energy infrastructure. Excuse me. So even the most well-intentioned developers and tribes, including tribes who can provide some or all of their own technical and financial resources, might share very different goals when pursuing energy development, and that's okay. For example, most tribes will want to include provisions to let's say, clean up and dismantle projects at the end of their useful life. They might want to pursue discounted electricity from the project. And now, how about all of the electricity from the project? And training and employment for tribal members. The problem is many developers, as I'm sure many of you know, balk at those increased costs and the unique challenges that arise from a tribe's wants and needs. And sacred site conflicts are a big one, but there are many others. And so at IEI, we have served as a vetter of partners and a buffer, supporting tribes in saying no to these one-sided deals and making sure that they, if they want to, own all of the renewable energy installations on their homelands, and either at the end of a lease agreement with a partnering company or through build transfer agreements that ensure tribal ownership from the point of commissioning, for example. But it's very different than even 8 months ago, right, with the funding that's now available. So another important thing to consider is intertribal collaboration. It can be very helpful. Sharing solutions and resources and knowledge regarding potential partners is so beneficial. This collaboration also serves as a means of facilitating agreements between tribes for financing, for project management, rights of way, leasing, partnerships agreement. Economies of scale can apply if you have tribes that are located in a small region together. These coordination of efforts also ensure that this big picture benefit of collaboration is realized for each tribe. So the bottom line of that is improved understanding and shared knowledge between tribes, development partners, state governments, utilities, the federal government. It's absolutely needed for continued renewable energy growth across tribal country, and this is now happening at scale. So capacity building. Again, while our federal partners are doing exponentially better each year providing capacity building services, there are still those gaps. And our academic and partners and NGOs like us need to fill. And we talked about the Solar Warriors program for solar installers and operators, and there are plentiful options for solar training in the world, but what's missing is native specific training that is trauma-informed in certain regions and takes into consideration the unique culture of Native people and how they may not be able to sit for an entire, 10-week class without interruption. And so we work really hard with training providers to design programs that meet the needs, the very unique needs of tribal members. So the other thing that's been missing, and we have heard it time and time again, and I'm pleased to tell you for the first time about it now, is a training program specifically for tribal energy leaders, which is why, in response to the expressed needs by our tribal partners, we've created the Indigenous Energy Leaders Fellowship Program, which has been designed to support promising Indigenous energy leaders in building their own capacity to obtain the broad range of essential knowledge that is needed to support tribes in navigating these opportunities and challenges in deploying clean energy and sustainability technologies, broadband, and all the things that go with it, in a way that aligns with tribal culture and leadership and community objectives. So this program is a collaboration between IEI, the Indigenous faculty and the team at the Just Energy Transition Center at Arizona State University, and the Energy Sovereignty Institute at the Microgrid Systems Laboratory. So 4 phases of the program are envisioned, starting with a seminar series in year 1, which I'm not sure we're going to get launched by the fall semester, but it will be by spring for sure. Then rapid fire, a certificate program, a certificate, bona fide certificate from ASU, and then a master's degree. And I'm pushing our academic friends, because I was one of them for a long time, you can do this in 3 years. And they're like, no way. No, you have to, because we need this capacity in tribal country right now. So we will also be working with towards the final phase, which would be expansion of the program to additional regions. We're envisioning 10, partnering with the tribal colleges and universities, additional large state universities, and Native community-based organizations to get this done. We have just begun speaking with the Native Energy Workforce Education Consortium, NUIC, a partnership between Haskell University and Southwestern Indian Polytechnic, SIPI. NUIC will offer science, technology, STEM programming starting in K-12 that's firmly grounded in tribal traditions. And so we look at it as, we're going to come from both ends and meet in the middle to enhance tribal knowledge as quickly as we can. We welcome comments and feedback on this project concept, so if anybody wants to see it, please shoot me an email, and we will get you that information and welcome you to the conversation there. All right. So let's look at some examples. The Northern Cheyenne Tribe, they were our first tribal partnership, and a subset of us have been working with this tribe for 2 decades, and they have really been amazing. And this project is DOE funded. It's 1.25 megawatts. It's a combination. It's 20 solar projects combined. It's 15 residential systems with battery storage to support elders who have critical medical equipment and can't be without power, where it's so unreliable there. And there's also 3 small commercial-sized systems, one on a water pump facility, one on a Head Start child care facility, and one on Busby High School. And then there's, depending on supply chain and cost, there'll be less than 1 megawatt array, and with the negative space in the shape of the Morning Star, the symbol of the Northern Cheyenne Tribe. So this job, my team alone, we had 8 tribal members working on this project on the ground, and 25 plus tribal members are expected to be employed over the course of its building, and then there will be several that will go on to O&M positions within the project. This is just a start. Kyle Alderman, he was the inspiration for this Energy Leaders Program. Kyle Alderman is the Renewable Energy Manager for the Northern Cheyenne Tribe. He left to go get an electrical engineering degree on full scholarship after almost dying from drug addiction. Decided he wanted to go get an EE degree and come back and bring clean energy to his tribe. And we've mentored Kyle for going on 5 years now. And so I wanted to call the leadership program Everything I Wish Kyle Knew. and we learned from him, right? And this tribe. So my deepest gratitude, and we love these people. They are our relatives, our family. And I'm going to call Bob up to talk to us about some really exciting projects and work that he's been doing with Tribal Solar and the EV Charging Network. And then we'll ask our colleagues from Seneca Solar to share a bit about their work as well. The man behind the curtain.
All right, thank you, Chéri. Honey, bonjour, everyone. Hey, my name is Bob Blake from Red Lake. Hey. I am the executive director of Native Sun Community Power Development and also the owner of Solar Bear, Gizi Somakwa, how we say it, Ojibwe. And there are some really cool things happening, I guess, with those couple, and also board member for IEI, and then also the energy coordinator now for Red Lake Nation. And I just became an adjunct professor at the University of Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs. So, yeah, a bunch of titles. Anyways, the first thing, let me just touch on the intertribal EV charging network. And this is what I was actually talking to the attorneys about when I raised my hand. Was I was kind of hoping that when I started this project here, and just so you all fully know, when this thing was being thought of, we were actually protesting Line 3. So we were actually at the front. We had our signs up. It was like really hot out. There were mosquitoes. There were flies. We were just sitting there. It was really hot, and we were like, "There's got to be an easier way to do this." And so we were like, "Hey, let's start looking for grants." So we had got on our phones and we were looking for grants, and we thought, well, you know what? If they're going to build an oil pipeline, we're going to build an electric vehicle charging pipeline, and we're still going to resist the fossil fuel infrastructure. And so this was just another form of resistance when we thought about this. And then I was like, hey, I'll call up my buddy Joe McNeil over at Standing Rock and see if he wants to do it. And sure enough, it all came through. We put in the grant to the DOE, and we were the highest awarded grant awardee, and Vice President Harris and Secretary Granholm made the announcement out in Pennsylvania. So when I heard that, I was like, yeah, all right, Native Sun got the grant. So it was really exciting. So please, everyone, apply for these things because they really do happen. And I'm just so excited that we are awarded close to $7 million for this project. And we were just going to install the first 3 charging stations from this grant just here in the fall. And Minnesota got hit with the 4th snowiest winter on record. It was like it came down. So we're going to have to push this back off into the spring now. But we also received some money from the GM Foundation to do some vehicle EV training. And so we're going to be doing that also too here coming up in the next couple of months, and partner that with some solar training that we're doing. So that's pretty exciting for us, for Native Sun. And then for Solar Bear, this picture right here, this is the Red Lake Nation Government Center. And right there, we put up a 70 kilowatt system on top of the government center. And this right here, we trained 10 tribal members on. And what was really exciting about that was that these guys just want to do more. And so that's what I'm really happy about. We end up doing another 200 kilowatt system on top of our job training center, the Oshkoshee Tata building, and that particular building, we trained 10 more tribal members. So all 20 of those guys got training. These were all guys that were like, nobody really wanted to hire them, and so like nobody really wanted to give them a shot. I took them on. The first 10 now got jobs in the tribe. They're like doing stuff, right? They're like working. Oh, okay. Oh, my fault. My fault. So the first 10 are now working for the tribe, and then the second 10, I know like half of them got jobs too now. So what happened was I put together a training program for inmates, at the Willow River Correctional Facility in the state of Minnesota, so training inmates, so fighting mass incarceration with climate change, fighting climate change with mass incarceration. This whole thing kind of picked up some national news, and then so I thought to myself, well, you know, like, I got dudes like this in my community up in Red Lake, so like I should just be training them guys too. And so, anyways, they end up getting jobs, and now they're doing stuff for the res, and I'm just really super proud and happy for them. But that's really those two projects. Actually, 3 projects are. You know, and now we're expanding out in utility scale. So like all that development and everything that these guys, the attorneys up here were talking about, or Chéri was talking about, and I just want to let all of you know, like, I'm just a regular dude in the, you know, on the res, like, just, you know what I mean? So, I mean, but I just, like, got really super excited about the stuff and passionate about the stuff, and I just picked it up. And so, like, anybody can do this. That's the point. Like, anybody in your community can do this. I mean, I mean, I'm not any special or anything. I just figured this all out, and just a lot of YouTube videos, basically. But to be quite honest with you, like, it's changed my life. And with all the opportunities that are coming now with the IRA Act and what the DOE is doing and the loans for our communities, I know that there's probably some guys like me in your community that it's going to do for them what it's done for me. And so that's why I would just really encourage all of you to really like look into this and find maybe that person that wants to do energy planning, that wants to get into this, because it's just really exciting. And we had a climate conference in the Twin Cities, and I was about to get on the elevator, and there was these 2 native dudes talking. And the one dude said to the other dude, he said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he says, "Oh, I do solar. My girlfriend does climate change and adaptation planning." And I like, man, but the pride that he felt in his voice, like I could hear it. And it's just like to me, that's what it was about, right? It was about purpose. And I really believe that that's what's going to change our communities. And I really do believe that us as Native people have a place in leading this transition. And so I really think it's important that we do it. And I'm just really excited to see all of you here and honored to be here. And miigwech, everyone, for having me.
Thank you, Solar Bear. I'd like to bring Aaron from Seneca Solar on up. I'm short, so you guys hear me, but Bob's taller, so you couldn't hear him. You want to hold it? Yeah. All right. Thank you for being here, Aaron.
Oh, thank you, Chéri, for inviting me to share this particular session. Hi, I'm Erin Dale, and I am from Taos, New Mexico. And my background is in international conflict resolution, and my specialty's been in the design and facilitation of public-private partnerships. Unlike Bob, I think I've never had a title in my life, probably because I am more aligned with the good work that needs to get done in this world. And so for I mean, not that titles don't do that too, but for some reason, just noticed. But that leads to, in the last 20 years, I've been focused primarily in New Mexico on rural and regional economic development, looking at ecotourism and regenerative economic development. And 6 years ago, for the last 6 years, I'd worked with a local utility, and we just achieved 100% daytime renewable energy plus battery storage. So I've been with Seneca Solar for almost a year. And Seneca Solar is a renewable energy developer and climate consultancy that is wholly owned by the Seneca Nation. So we're a division of Seneca Holdings. And our revenues, of course, provide income back to on-territory priorities for the Seneca Nation. And our mission is to profitably for ourselves, but also for all of our customers, so all the tribal nations that we're engaged with, and to equitably deliver those innovative climate solutions that are earth healing. And what we mean by that is, of course, renewable energy is earth healing because it's not extractive, but we're also talking about what is the cleanest form of the new technologies. Or as Chéri was saying, Earth healing is also about how do you do development in terms of renewable energy that aligns with the being trauma informed, or that aligns with workforce development and any other priorities. So it truly is an integrative approach. And then as a tribally owned business, it makes us unique in that we can leverage, so we believe, as the rules get clearer and clearer, that in partnership, in an unprecedented form of partnership from tribe to tribe, that we'll be able to help you with whatever your goals and priorities might be. Go down. Just wanted to share a few things. So like I said, I've only been with Seneca Solar for a year, and there are a number of people in the room. I want to call out Anthony Giacobbe right now, who works for Seneca Energy, which is the on-territory utility, and telecommunications, which, thank goodness, he implemented broadband so that you could really do smart grid technology. But together, we have lots of learnings, but I'll share just the ones from Seneca Solar at the moment. So, and I think Chéri and everyone else is saying this, that we have traditionally thought about renewable energy as, reducing energy bills, which they do for members of a community. What? Okay, sorry. And yet what we're really seeing with all of these new innovations is that they are I'm going to dance. There's music up front. They really are, an economic stability and resource to use for whatever a tribe's priorities are. So, for instance, a couple of our partners and customers are looking at how do you take the revenue from medium-scale renewable energy to fund like an opioid center? Or how do you channel that into workforce development? Or, each tribe, of course, has different priorities, but we're starting to see what those are. And as we look at the deals that are going to get made and are in the process of being written, how do we ensure that those priorities are met? And they're always led by what council decides. Okay, obviously, we have a deep respect for whatever the goals and the priorities are of different tribes. And then, of course, in the federal programs, the rule clarifications, they're coming, and we are looking forward to them as they come in waves and waves. What I do hope that all of you are doing is really advocating. And advocating, what I would say is in a way at a principled level, so at a value level. So the people in the room, make sure you talk to them, right? What is it that you really care about, right? And how do you articulate that at a principle level? So for instance, if we are applying for an RFP to build out solar, one of the principles is that people on territory or in tribal communities, we add, not just workforce development with a university that we have a partnership with or some kind of training program, but we're also looking at on-the-job internships on a real project so that those are written into the way that we respond. So we're learning that it's bringing hope, as Bob said, and it's also bringing, just a sense of inspiration of what the future can be. And Chéri did speak about, the private sector. So it's, again, there's no right or wrong. There's no really better than another. It's more about what do you need and who's going to serve those needs for you, right? How do you know that the work you're doing and what you want to create has the highest potential? So, of course, we're going to aim as tribe-to-tribal relationships to get to that 70% ITC, if possible, and we're committed to that. So here's a few services, and I'll share a couple more pieces In terms of some of the customers we're working with without violating an NDA that I might have. As one tribe that we're working with is truly looking at an integrated economic development plan. So again, energy is a foundation for revenue. And they're looking at phased projects. And that includes not just renewable energy projects at smaller scale for their members, but it's also looking at larger renewable energy projects to go into the grid to sell to large businesses, right? And those large businesses can be corporate. They could also be federal agencies, right? And you get more credit if you're selling or putting renewables on and servicing a federal building, for instance. So we're looking at it. It's kind of like a menu in which you pick and choose what is going to be the highest value for you. Trying to think of a few more that we're working with. So another thing that I'm sure many of you are dealing with is diversifying your portfolio, using the renewable energy transition and these opportunities to diversify your portfolios. So that may mean putting renewable energy on your casinos, right? It may mean doing like a community solar garden for a number of residences. We have one customer who is prioritizing elders in their community and building out a solar community garden type project so that their elders have renewable energy with battery storage backup. And that's a way that they're entering into this, right? Obviously, there's a number of projects where you can put them on critical infrastructure, so community centers and hospitals and healthcare centers and education. So some of the clients and customers we're working with are really looking at that integrated way to do things. So what I would do is just say, find the right people to work with and make sure that the principles you're following are really, really clear. And then you'll know the partners that you really want to work with and how to work with them so that they help you meet your goals and really do take this opportunity to change the world. Thank you.
Hey, I forgot to say a couple of things real quick. One, just a policy point here real quick. So I've been working on creating a tribal energy advisory board for the state of Minnesota. And it's House File 1647 if you want to check it out right now. But what this will do, the state will then have members from each tribe. At least they'll be in consultation when transmission lines in other energy development is being done in that particular state. They'll at least be able to be consulted, and because I think sometimes what happens is we get these energy companies that want to run their KV lines through our territory, and they don't consult with us, or they don't let us know the real value of the project, right? And so that was the reason behind this, and we're doing this in the state of Minnesota right now. And then the second thing is Red Lake. We're going to be selling power to a state agency, Minnesota Department of Transportation. So all of you guys have a Department of Transportation in your state. They have a really high CSG, like greenhouse gases that they emit, right? So they're trying to offset that, right? So we're going to be selling about 27 megawatts of renewable energy to that agency. But what that's going to do is it's going to clear a way for the other tribes to go out to also do power purchase agreements with that. And I was given permission by our attorney, our legal counsel in Red Lake, that if any one of you wanted to eventually talk to him and show us, and he could show you how we did that, and we'll share that with all of you. Red Lake would share that with all of you, that you could try to do something similar in your state or to work with state agencies. So I just wanted to mention that real quick.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Erin. All right, we're doing good. So I put these up here because in September I was humbled to be awarded an MIT Indigenous Communities Fellowship, and as part of the evaluation, thousands of us candidates had to identify how our work aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and supporting them and understanding and navigating the benefits of this legislation, and how it was going to translate metrically. And I had a really hard time doing this, but I just wanted to point out that before the IRA, these were written. And even just these small hundreds of families, 5 tribes a year, 1.5 million tons of CO2 offset, 450 million in savings, 30 tribes in 5 years. This all goes out the window now. This is like exponentially more. And, I'm not being paid by the federal government to say that this is amazing, but it is amazing. And so our feds recognize that there's a need for the type of technical and administrative assistance for tribes, and as well as funding, but it's not possible for our government to do it alone. So that's where philanthropy comes in. And we're working with our philanthropic partners to cover that 10 to 20%. Yes, there's no more 50% match. That Cheyenne project originally had a 50% match requirement. That tribe didn't have the resources to come up with that. That was, it's a $4 million project, $2 million. So we raised it. And with in-kind and donations from individuals. So that's all gone now, except there is still, and when you're talking massive projects, like some of the ones we're working on, that 10 or 20% is a huge amount of money. So for tribes that don't have those resources, philanthropy is coming, and we're working with the Christensen Fund and MacArthur Foundation and other philanthropy, sources of philanthropy and foundations to use what they call program-related investments or mission-related investments, PRIs, MRIs, to cover that 10 to 20%. And so by supporting these efforts, philanthropy is stepping up to ensure that this enormous investment by our government, which is long overdue, affects the transformation for Native American tribes and tribal members that it's intended to and that we all deserve. So we also have conversations going with Native banks and impact investors and other folks that are willing to provide that bridge capital until such time that, sometimes it'll be waived. The philanthropy, they will often waive the whole thing if you keep your promises. If not, it's like zero interest or very low interest. And then there's other mechanisms to finance that gap as well. And then with the revenue from the production of the assets, there's no problem paying the debt, right? It's so don't worry too much about that. Reach out to us and others who have expertise in this area to talk about it. So I'm going to skip to this, the thank you page. I just want to thank you all for all the hard work you're doing on behalf of tribes and your dedication. And we are all working together. A rising tide lifts all boats, as my husband says. And we look forward to having an opportunity to engage all of you. And, we just have to remember that renewables, what this administration affords us now is no longer do renewables run the risk of being as extractive as fossil development. And we are preventing all of the value and the benefit from being siphoned out of our communities by doing it in a self-determined way. So, Wilalek, thank you. Thank you all. Have a good lunch.
Yes. Thank you, Chéri. And a special thank you to the Indigenous Energy Initiative Group